Hello my friends, in this video we will be taking a look at the autosomal DNA results, predicted phenotype traits, and G25 sample results of a modern Northwestern European with bipolar disorder type 1. So this is actually an academic sample from a study on bipolar disorder, and first we're going to start with the G25 results of this sample. With the G25 results, the sample is closest to Danish, Norwegians, Icelandic, Shetlandic, Scottish. So essentially, this sample is quite Northwestern European, most similar to various Scandinavians. With the Eurogenes K13, he was most similar to Norwegians, but with G25, he seems to be most similar to Danes. We can try to model him. Let's try to set distance column to 0.5. And here he's getting modeled as a mixture of Icelandic, Shetlandic, Danish, and Swedish. So overall, he's kind of like Northern, more so North Germanic. So looks like he's mostly North Germanic in ancestry. So kind of Scandinavian, maybe a mixture of Scandinavian and British Isles because we see Shetlandic here, but mostly Scandinavian in ancestry. So now let's move on to the results with trait predictor. And first we're going to start with the haplogroup. His Y-DNA is R. Let's look at the variants and find out if there's anything we can look at. It looks like it's not R1b because he's scoring 0 R1b variants out of 4, so it's probably not R1b. It is not R2. There is no variance for R1a in total, so it might be R1a, but we can't know that for sure. So it is probably R1a actually. His Y-DNA is most likely R1a. We can find that out with YSEC clade finder. Let's try that now. And indeed, his lineage is R1a. It is R1a Z280. So it's the Slavic subclade of R1a. So it looks like his Y-DNA is R1a Z280. And now let's move on to his results with Nashakot and for his phenotype. His phenotype is very interesting because he's very blue-eyed. He scores 73% for the odds of blue eyes, and that is higher than most samples I've seen so far. There is very little odds for brown eyes and dark brown eyes. It's pretty much zero. There's only 3% odds for hazel eyes, so there's very tiny odds for hazel eyes, and most likely his eye color is blue at 73% odds. For hair color, his hair color is most likely dark blonde. The second most likely hair color after dark blonde is actually light blonde at 22.7, and after that it's light brown at 22.5. And he definitely does not have black hair or red hair. For skin color, he most likely has white skin, although pale skin is also quite possible at 30.9% odds. So most likely his skin color is somewhere between white and palest. His hair color is most likely dark blonde, and his skin and his eye color is most likely blue. So he's obviously very white, very white in terms of color, very pale, very blonde and blue-eyed. And for hair texture, he's actually scoring kinky or curly hair, which is very interesting. I don't often see samples of Northern European descent scoring this type of hair texture. So his hair texture is predicted to be quite kinky or curly, which is definitely very interesting. This might be the result of a low quality, low coverage sample, but it might also be um, that's definitely interesting that he's scoring like that for hair texture. And this will affect the phenotypes in the phenotype oracle as well. For nose shape, he is scoring Greek nose shape. So his nose shape is rather long and um, narrow and aquiline. Now for coloring related variants, he's got 2 light color variants in this variation of HERC2, 2 light color variants in this variation of HERC2. He's got blue eye haplotype 3 and 2, and probably 1 as well. Yes, probably 1 as well because of these variations here. So he probably has the whole package of BH2, 3, and 1. Most likely has BH2, 3, and 1, or the whole package altogether. But we don't know that for sure because the genotype here is technically not in the file, but pretty much it's probably there. He's got 2 light color variants in this variation of SLC24A5, so that's typical for Eurasians, and 2 light color variants in this variation of SLC45A2, that's also typical for Europeans. Now, he does not have any ginger variants in MC1R, so he does not have any predisposition to having ginger hair in MC1R. And I don't find it particularly useful to run him through Snipper3 because we already know that it's going to be blue, blonde, and white skin. So there is really no point running him through Snipper3. I don't find that to be useful. Let's go ahead and look at the phenotype oracle. And as you can see with the phenotype oracle, the closest phenotypes to him all have curly hair. That's what's so beautiful about my phenotype predictor, is that it takes into account the hair texture. As you can see, these phenotypes with the phenotype oracle have curly hair. This phenotype is curly hair. This phenotype is curly hair. This phenotype does not. Actually, I think it also has curly hair. I don't remember if I modified the Nordic phenotype to have curly hair, but the closest phenotypes to him both have curly hair, and that's very beautiful. How I modified that in my phenotypes um, hash map. So the closest mixture is a mixture of Baltic phenotype with curly hair plus Mediterranean with curly hair. I guess like a light color Mediterranean. Then a mixture of Nordid plus Mediterranean with curly hair. Then a mixture of Nordic, Nordid, whatever, Norid plus Baltic with curly hair. So all these phenotypes with curly hair are, he's scoring all these phenotypes with curly hair in the mixtures because he's got a prediction for curly hair, which I find really beautiful. Um, Technically, if you look at this phenotype, this Norid phenotype, uh, I think I set its hair texture value to be like sort of intermediate between curly and straight, because you can't tell if its hair is curly or if it's straight based on the picture. So I think I set its hair texture value to be intermediate. I don't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure I did. But for Nordit, for this phenotype, I think I must have set it to be straight because it does look straight. I don't remember exactly. I have to look it up in the code to know for sure. But I think I must have set this to be straight and this to be intermediate. All right. Now let's look at the um, maybe let's look at the ethnic calculator results. This might be interesting to look at. What does my ethnicity calculator get for him? So my ethnicity calculator finds that he's closest to Volga, Aka, Iron Age. That's crazy. But keep in mind that this is done with 233 SNPs, so it might not be the best. And to my credit, the second closest population is Bell Beaker from Britain, which is sort of relevant to the population that he descends from. So to my credit, there is some semblance of normalcy with these results. There's also Bell Beaker here. There's also Funnel Beaker, British, corded ware. So there is some semblance of normalcy with these results. Actually, there's British plus Volga Ka, which I guess is pretty. It's pretty off. Yeah, it's pretty off. Yeah, it's pretty off. It's pretty terrible. Actually, you have to really look for the results that make sense here. But and the closest two-way mixture is Volga Burtas plus Bailulai Lithuania. So my trade predictor seems to think it's an Eastern European individual, which is pretty off, because this person is like a Scandinavian with some British Isles mixture. So yeah, the trade predictor ethnicity calculator with 233 SNPs did not correctly guess the genetic admixture, the ethnicity admixture that comprised this individual. But it was close. Come on, it's Northern European versus Eastern European. What's the difference, really? It didn't guess him as an East Asian or a Sub-Saharan African. I think that's a win. All right, let's close that. All right, let's go into the biomarkers panel, and let's reset that to 100. Okay. So for the biomarkers panel, it's got below average levels for vitamin D levels, below average levels for LDL cholesterol, which is good. Below average levels for HDL cholesterol, which is okay. So below average levels for LDL cholesterol is really good, but below average levels for HDL cholesterol is not so good. Average levels, actually higher levels for glucose, very much higher levels for glucose. Wow, that's very interesting. So scoring like that is actually kind of concerning. Definitely some risks for diabetes based on this result. We might want to watch out for diabetes on. I'm not sure if there's overlap between this result and the diabetes panel. I don't remember, but we do have to watch out for that. So there's some concerns for diabetes based on the score. He's got a predisposition to higher than average levels of hemoglobin, which also predisposes him to diabetes. Lower levels of blood pressure, which is good, so slightly lower blood pressure. Lower levels of iron in the blood, so slightly lower predisposition to hemochromatosis. Uh, Average sex hormone binding globulin, we're going to skip that. Average base pairs for telomere length, so average lifespan, and slightly higher height, so taller than average height. Pretty cool. All right. Now let's look at the polygenic risk scores. I'm really curious about the diabetes, and I'm also really curious about bipolar 1 and schizophrenia. Well, I did look at the result beforehand. Let me tell you, this is a crazy result for bipolar 1 and schizophrenia. It is not what you expect, because this sample actually has bipolar 1, but its score for bipolar 1 is not what you would expect for somebody who has bipolar 1. So he's got below average score for kidney stones. He's got below average score for arrhythmia nodosum. He's got below average score for hemoglobin A disease. He's got average score, above average score for gout. He's got um, let's skip over that. He's got very high score for AMD, very very high score for AMD. You'd think that this is a sample with AMD. This is an academic sample with age-related macular degeneration instead of bipolar, but this is a sample with bipolar, and he's got lower score for rheumatoid arthritis. He's got higher score for epilepsy. He's got lower score for vitiligo. He's got higher score for myopia. He's got higher score for primary biliary cirrhosis. He's got lower score for stroke. He's got higher score for male pattern hair loss, which is kind of typical for people of Northwest European descent to score higher for that. He's got higher score for atrial fibrillation. He's got lower score for deep vein thrombosis. He's got average score for cardiovascular issues. Now we're getting into the mental health section of the result, and this is where the crazy part starts. He's got lower score for ADHD. He's got average score for unipolar depression, and he's got way below average score for bipolar type 1, and he's got way below average score for schizophrenia. So this sample who actually has bipolar type 1 has got a 0.43 times the average odds for bipolar type 1 and 0.5 times the average odds for schizophrenia. That is completely crazy. And we're gonna go over the monogenic results of this result in a little bit, but this type of scoring the way he does, this is absolutely, this stunned me. I wasn't expecting that actually from an academic sample with bipolar type 1. I was not expecting that whatsoever from this sample. He's got lower odds of type 2 diabetes. He's got lower odds of type 1 diabetes. He's got higher odds of Alzheimer's. He's got lower odds of multiple sclerosis. And we're going to discuss what might have contributed to him actually having the disease, right? Despite scoring so low for bipolar and schizophrenia. He's got no risk tolerance for breast cancer, which is really good. So definitely not predisposed to breast cancer whatsoever. He's got average odds of prostate cancer, really high score for glioma or brain cancer. He's got average predisposition to thyroid cancer. And he doesn't have any JAK2 variants for blood cancers. And he's got 7 risk cancers for testicular cancer out of 12. Actually, he's got homozygous genotype for risk genotype in keto G, and this variation of keto G in here. So he's quite cooked when it comes to testicular cancer genotype for keto G. But that's typical for West Eurasians and Europeans in general, so nothing is very special about that. He has the same type of genotype in keto G as me or you or any other European, which is risk. It's very risky genotype. It does predispose us to be more predisposed to testicular cancer, but and we do have higher odds of testicular cancer compared to other ethnicities, but most of us still never develop this issue, so it's not that big of a deal. One risk variant for celiac disease out of 4, pretty typical, and one risk variant for Crohn's disease out of 16. Looks like it's not marked as important, but so it's not that big of a deal. And we don't see any other risk variants that are not common in this file. So it looks like there is no miscalls. This is actually a very high quality file. There is no miscalls here. Something I noticed so far. There is nothing that's unusual or uncommon. And by the way, this is a very high quality file. You see that there's all these rare conditions. There's out of 10 total, out of 14 total, out of 42 total, out of 22 total, out of 28 total. So all these are very high quality. There's a lot of information in this file actually, which is really interesting. And there is no miscalls, which is very cool. And for allergies, actually, I think I skipped over the allergies part. Yeah, so he's got 6 risk variants for allergies out of 12 total. So kind of slightly higher than average predisposition to allergies, but that's okay. Now we're going to go over the monogenic part of the results. So the risk score for glioma is a little bit of a concern. The predisposition to brain cancer. We might want to look at the cancers panel, but what is really a mystery to me is how come this sample has bipolar type 1 without scoring high for bipolar or schizophrenia whatsoever. Maybe the sample, maybe there is some environmental factors that play the role. Maybe there is drugs or some kind of addiction, something like that contributed to the sample this individual developing this condition. But we're gonna go over that right now. So he's scoring warrior phenotypes, lower dopamine reuptake and higher dopamine levels. And I definitely associate the warrior phenotype with higher odds of schizophrenia and bipolar, because higher levels of dopamine in the mesolimbic pathway is associated with schizophrenia and bipolar. Um, and higher levels of dopamine in the mesolimbic pathway is a result of slower dopamine reuptake, which is the result of lower activity of the COMT, MAOA, and MAOB enzymes, which is the result of having these types of genotypes right here. So it makes sense that, by the way, if you look at these genotypes, this is a warrior genotype, this is a warrior genotype, all of these are warrior genotypes. I don't think there is a single genotype here that is a warrior genotype. So this is a warrior, this is a warrior. This sample is scoring all warrior genotypes, which is very, very, very interesting. There is no warrior genotypes here whatsoever. And by the way, if you look at even if you look at the stuff that's written here for these genotypes, so this samples this genotype says one study found higher odds of schizophrenia, but this genotype for COMT says decreased risk of schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. This genotype says slightly lower risk of schizophrenia. This genotype says slightly lower odds of schizophrenia. So it seems that for COMT, I noticed this pattern when I was compiling these, when I was writing this in the code, when I was doing research, that warrior genotypes in COMT seem to come with a at least according to the research done by researchers in academia, the warrior genotypes in COMT seem to come with a reduced risk of schizophrenia, which seems counterintuitive to me, but that seems to be the case. Whereas warrior genotypes in MAOB and MAOA seem to come with a increased risk of schizophrenia. I don't understand why that is the case, because both of these enzymes do the same thing in the brain. They are breaking down dopamine. Maybe that is because perhaps COMT breaks down dopamine in the mesocortical pathway, whereas MAOA and MAOB breaks down dopamine in the mesolimbic pathway. Maybe that's the case. Maybe that's how it is. Maybe that's how it works. I That would be very, very interesting. Maybe I just made a breakthrough. Maybe I just made a breakthrough right now if I said that. Wow, I'm a genius. If I just said that and I'm actually right, then I'm a genius. But that seems to be the case. I noticed this pattern when I was compiling that, so I'm not really sure what to make of this. And I did not. None of these variations contribute to the score, the polygenic risk score for bipolar and schizophrenia. So none of this contributes to the scores. This is not a reason. This is not the reason why this sample scored so low for bipolar and schizophrenia risk. But this might contribute. This might explain scoring so high for warrior might explain a part of the reason why this sample actually developed the condition. Just to reiterate what I said earlier, this sample might have the reason this sample developed bipolar might be because they have too much dopamine in their mesolimbic pathway. Now for DRD2, they seem to score an intermediate number of dopamine D2 receptor sites in the brain, which suggests an intermediate predisposition to bipolar and schizophrenia. Which does contribute to the score. This panel does contribute to the score quite a lot. It is a very big contributor to the score. So it looks like some other genotypes that also contribute to the score are the reason why they score so low for bipolar and schizophrenia. Besides this, because this result would end up in them scoring average. They are heterozygous for the no-go learner variation, and they have this genotype in DRD2, which leads to higher odds of schizophrenia and less resistance to pain. So this is something that would actually increase their odds of schizophrenia and bipolar. This genotype also would lead to a intermediate number of dopamine D2 receptors and average risk of schizophrenia and bipolar. They do not have any A1 alleles in TAC1, which also would increase the number of D2 dopamine receptors and also increase the odds of schizophrenia and bipolar. I don't remember about this variation, and for this variation, I remember that. Actually, I don't remember this variation. I'd have to look it up again on GWAS Central. I'm pretty sure I pulled this one from GWAS Central. But in terms of this variation, this leads to higher number of dopamine D2 receptor sites in the brain. This I remember for sure because I wrote it in here. So this genotype once again would lead to higher odds of schizophrenia and bipolar. I don't remember if this affects the score, the polygenic risk score, though. It might, and if it does, it's a small effect, but it might. Okay, now let's see what else. For serotonin, they are scoring intermediate levels of 5-HT and serotonin, which suggests an intermediate predisposition to depression and anxiety, but we don't really care about depression and anxiety. We want to find out why this sample has bipolar type 1. So for DRD, let's explore the other DRD genes. So for DRD1, they have this gene type which leads to lower likelihood of autism. This rare gene type is implicated in lower odds of autism and tobacco addiction, and this gene type leads to decreased risk of various mental health issues. So I think these variations, I'm pretty sure that I actually made the mistake of having them affect the score for bipolar. So that's probably why he's scoring so low for bipolar, because these variations affect the score. I think I should remove that. I'm not sure, but I think I should remove that. And he's got this variation of DRD3, which is associated with a slightly lower risk of OCD and intellectual disability, which is once again a really good score. And his genotype, and he's got this variation of DRD4, which is implicated slightly higher odds of schizophrenia. Right, but DRD4 actually does have some effect on schizophrenia because it is located in the same cluster of genes as DRD. DRD2 is located nearby, and the actual receptors, D4 receptors, are located nearby D2 receptors, and they're kind of in the same cluster as well. So DRD4 is very much relevant to schizophrenia and bipolar. So this genotype, in reality, I don't remember it affects the score. I think it does affect the score actually. Yeah, it does. It must affect the score. But this genotype does actually increase the odds of bipolar and schizophrenia quite a lot. So this might explain, in part, why this sample has a predisposition to bipolar. Now, moving on to ADCY2, this is one of the genes that was studied a little bit more for association with bipolar. And here he's got homozygous major allele at ADCY2, which is associated with decreased bipolar risk, and then another gene type here which is associated with lower odds of bipolar once again. So this is another big reason why he's scoring lower for risk of bipolar. And there's a bunch of other genes that are much more, which have much more scientific backing to them, like by that I mean lower p-values and higher, just higher amount of research that was associated with them, and that's what a lot of these SNPs that I added for bipolar right later. So if you look at the SNPs that I have for bipolar on my Polygenic Risk score page, it's 25 SNPs, and for schizophrenia, it's 22 SNPs. It's much more SNPs than you see on the screen right there for DRD2 panel, for example, or the ADCY2. If you add them all together, that's going to be like maybe 10 SNPs, but that's 25 SNPs for bipolar type 1 and 22 for schizophrenia. So there's additional 12 and 15 SNPs that are not shown on the screen, and they are, for the most part, they are the low p-value SNPs. They are, for the most part, the academic sample SNPs. So academic study SNPs. So for the most part, they are the low p-value SNPs that I added from academic studies. So it's very, very interesting that this bipolar individual is scoring so low despite for bipolar type 1, despite having a relatively average score for the DRD2 panel, and it's very, very interesting that he doesn't even have the minor allele on ADCY2. So it looks like the reason this sample has bipolar type 1 might be environmental, actually, not even so much genetic. And for autism, this sample is scoring lower odds of autism, which is also very, very interesting. 50% odds for lower odds of autism. So actually predisposition against autism. So this sample is actually very healthy mentally, because it's very typical with my trait predictor to score higher odds of autism. And this sample is scoring lower odds of lactose intolerance, so the sample is lactose persistent. It looks like he is carrying the European variant for lactose persistence. In MCM6, in this variation of MCM6, he does not have any drought variants, but he does have homozygous genotype for European lactose persistence mutation in this variation of MCM6. So he does have the variants for European lactose persistence here. He is not a dwarf. Very good to see. Maybe I might be missing something here. Nope, I'm not missing anything here. Okay, for hemochromatosis, no risk variants for that. Really good to see. For Alzheimer's, he has one APOE variant for Alzheimer's. So he does have some predisposition to Alzheimer's. And we remember he was scoring high for the risk of Alzheimer's. Let's go back to the polygenic risk score page and look up Alzheimer's again. Yeah, so he's scoring 1.7 for the odds of Alzheimer's, and that is because he's got one risk variant for Alzheimer's in APOE in this variation right here. He's got no risk variance for multiple sclerosis in HLA, and he's got predisposition to lower or intermediate odds of cardiovascular issues for the cardiovascular disease panel. For facial morphology panel, he's got European genotypes in EZAR. He's got intermediate odds of protruding nasal bridge. He's got no risk variance for vitiligo in the HLA gene. He's got no micropenis, really good to see. Mix of muscle types, likely more sprinter rather than endurance athlete. And he's got not an Asian flusher, lower odds of alcoholism, no more risk of esophageal cancer. Okay. He's got risk of heart failure due to beta blocker medications is 1.6 times the average. There's stuff here about psychosis, which might be very interesting to talk about as well. Slightly increased odds of cannabis-induced psychosis. Which does actually, this genotype is very interesting because the variant that increases the odds of cannabis-induced psychosis, it persists. If you smoke cannabis once, having this variant actually increases your odds of psychosis staying after you have stopped smoking cannabis. So this genotype increases the odds of psychosis persisting after you quit cannabis altogether. So this is very interesting. This might be a part of the reason why this sample has bipolar in the first place. I'm looking for reasons for explanations why this sample has bipolar actually, because this sample does not seem to be predisposed to it whatsoever. Higher odds of meth-induced psychosis and lower susceptibility to meth-induced psychosis. Very, very interesting. No risk variance for pain and hypersensitivity out of 12 total. All right. And looks like no risk variance for familial Mediterranean fever. Looks like he's got two genotypes for possibly impaired folate metabolism and MTHFR. So this is going to ruin the homocysteine gene panel, homocysteine panel. But I think the cardiovascular panel on the polygenic risk score page was average. So the homocysteine panel must be okay. All right. The risk score for alcoholism is average. Epithelial cancers, he's scoring actually intermediate or slightly higher odds of epithelial cancers. Yes, I was gonna check that because glioma score was pretty bad. Yeah, glioma score is pretty bad. But let's look at the epithelial cancers panel. Looks like he's got only 4 genotypes here, and 2 genotypes are bad, 2 genotypes are good. So overall, pretty good. Okay. For leukemia panel, he's got this genotype which leads to significantly higher odds of leukemia. This genotype leads to significantly higher odds of leukemia, but these genotypes lead to lower odds of leukemia, which is okay, I guess. For rare diseases and traits panel, let's look at that. Let's see, what does he have for rare diseases and traits panel? He's got higher odds of exfoliation glaucoma, but remember he was scoring 3 point something times the average odds. He's got 10 times the higher odds for glaucoma. Not finished major salad disease mutation carrier, really good to see. Carry of biotinase deficiency mutation, which is very, very interesting. Okay. Okay. He's got no risk variance for HIV here. And for HLA gene panel, he's got lower odds of autoimmune disease. Very, very good. So let's check HLA genotypes for HLA gene panel. And for the HLA genotypes, he's got looks like he's got this is a bad genotype, but all of these are good genotypes. And then he's got good genotypes here in HLA-B, then he's got good genotype here in HLA-C, and for HLA-D, I think these are all good genotypes. So there's only one bad genotype, and it's in HLA-A here, which leads to lower antibody levels. So overall, he's doing quite good. For a homocysteine panel, yes, the homocysteine panel is quite bad because of the MTHFR genotypes, but overall, it's looking quite good. And I still haven't found an answer for why this sample has bipolar type 1. I'm not sure why this sample developed it. I don't understand. And he's scoring elevated or intermediate homocysteine levels for homocystinuria panel. He actually does have a variant for homocystinuria, which is this one, which does affect the score for homocysteine levels, which probably inflates the homocysteine levels here, elevated homocysteine levels. Without this variant, it probably would be like 28 or 27% instead of 33. And no risk variants for ADL or any muscular dystrophy myopathies. And for color blindness panel, he does not have any variants for color blindness in OPN1LW, OPN1MW, or OPN1SW. He does not have a predisposition to obesity. He has a predisposition to intermediate odds of obesity based on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 SNPs. He has, based on one SNP, a predisposition to lower odds of syncope. He's got 2 copies of the quote-unquote hunter-gatherer CLT-CL1 gene variant, which leads to a reduced ability to process carbs and sugars. He's got wet earwax, slightly better body odor, normal colostrum, and he's likely part East Asian based on his genotype and his variation. Wow, that's very interesting. That leads to slightly better body odor and wet earwax. In case you weren't aware, East Asians have this variation, which leads to apparently dry earwax and better body odor. And this individual right here has heterozygous genotype for this variation, where he's got 1 East Asian allele and 1 European allele. Okay. Now for blood group panel, his blood type is most likely type A, which is pretty common. Most likely, the most common blood type is type O, but this sample has got blood type A. And this is it for this individual. For this individual with bipolar 1 from an academic study. This is an individual from an academic study from Macquarie University. Bipolar disorder proband 1. Biomaterial provider is Dr. Andrei Hallen, Department of Molecular Studies, Macquarie University, Balaclava Road, North Ryde, Australia. So this is an Australian guy. This is an Australian dude of Northern European descent who has bipolar disorder type 1. And I still don't have any idea why this individual actually has bipolar type 1. I hope that with my rambling and with my discussion on this individual's results, I might have shed some light on the sample. Maybe you understood something. Maybe you picked something up. I don't know, guys. But leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Leave a comment if you want to comment on something. Maybe you want to add some suggestions. Maybe you want to, maybe you want to add some suggestions. Maybe you want to say something I missed, perhaps. Make sure you leave a comment and check out the description of the video. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.